It's the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 28, looking at the groups and teams of the 2024 Copa America. This episode is looking at the players of USA. Here we go! Hello and welcome again to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin, and we continue Series 28 on the groups and players of the 2024 Copa America. This episode covers USA's players and is in fact part 2 of the Players Mediacast. Here we look at the selections. In part 1, we made a list of the candidates and introduced them and their likelihood of making the squad. And there is a link to that, part 1, in the show notes. This episode will be divided into 3 sections. In section 1, we'll take a quick look at the preliminary squad and their warm-up games. In section 2, which is the main part of the media cast here, we'll look over the list we compiled in part 1 to see who made it and who didn't. And in section 3, we summarize surprises in the selections and review injuries. This will be a fairly short one because things went very much as expected, but let's begin by looking into section 1. So the preliminary squad, there is no preliminary squad for USA here. They published a 26-man final squad on June 14th. And there have been no changes to that. So 26 players on the preliminary squad. 26 players on the final squad. No cuts because there was no preliminary squad, and no late replacements for the USA. Let's take a look at the warm-up games. We're not really interested in the scores, but they did receive a thrashing at the hands of Colombia there, losing 5-1 to them. I just want to see where that game was played. It was in the USA. It was in Landover, Maryland, in the USA there. So a heavy loss there, but then they came back on June 12th with a draw against Brazil, so a bit more confidence inspiring there. As we go through the players and their positions, we're going to note who were the starters in the warm-up games, and not many surprises there either. Okay, that's section 1. Let's move on to section 2. And begin with the manager, Greg Berhalter. So no surprise that he was not fired before the tournament or anything. So we'll consider him a selected candidate. Let's look at our goalkeepers. We had a definite candidate in Matt Turner. He was selected. A likely candidate in Ethan Hovath there, and he too was selected. A mild surprise in that the possible candidate, Drake Callender, was not selected, but the possible but unlikely Sean Johnson was. I should have thought about it a bit more, though. Johnson was possible but unlikely because he had missed a lot of games due to injury. But now that he's recovered from that injury, he's back and available to play. He's been the backup keeper for many tournaments since the 2017 Gold Cup. So given that he's healthy, he seems a natural selection over newcomer Drake Callender there. So not as much of a surprise as all that. The other possible but unlikely candidate, Gabriel Slonina, not selected. On to central defence, and we have a definite candidate in Chris Richards. He was selected. I'm just going to go back before I do this and look at the warm-up games for the US. So it was Matt Turner starting in both games there. So it seemed like he would be the starter even in part 1, so no surprise there. Okay, now we are ready to move on to central defenders, and we have a definite candidate, Chris Richards, and 2 likely candidates, Tim Ream and Miles Robinson. both of those selected for the squad. And three possible candidates. Teams usually bring 5 or 6 central defenders to tournaments, so we were expecting a couple of these. And the ones that were selected were Cameron Carter Vickers and Mark McKenzie. The third candidate there, Austin Trusty, not selected. Okay, and we're not going to mention the possible but unlikely or seemingly off the squad players unless they are selected. Let's go to the warm-up games and see who started. It was the starting pair that we expected, Tim Ream and Chris Richards. We did see a little bit of rotation in the games prior to the Cup, but they were the main two. Okay, left backs, we have Anthony Robinson as a as a likely candidate, not a definite there, and also Christopher Lund as a likely candidate, both of them making it to the final squad. And that is it. Our possible candidate, DeJuan Jones, not selected there. And in the warm-up games, it was Anthony Robinson playing in both games. So he very much looks like the starter, even though we did see Lund making a bit of a claim on the spot. Robinson had come back at the end there. Okay, on the right defense, we have Serginho Dest, but we knew in part one that he was not going to be part of the squad. He's out with an injury that prevents him from being in this tournament. We'll review that at the end. So we were curious to see what would happen on this side. We pretty much guessed that Joe Scally, the likely candidate, would be selected. And it's actually not really a surprise that one of our seemingly off-the-squad players was selected, and even less of a surprise that it was Shaq Moore, since he was part of their World Cup 2022 squad. So Shaq Moore seemingly off the squad. A bit of a surprise because we didn't know what they were going to do. In fact, let's go to the warm-up games and see what they did do, because we thought maybe someone from another position might come in and cover this spot. But no, it was Joe Scally in both games there starting. So we now expect him to start in the Cup. On to midfielders we go. And we have Tyler Adams. Well, I'm not sure how long he was the captain until he was the captain during the 2022 World Cup, but now Christian Pulisic is captain again. Tyler Adams was off the team for 15 months. He came back for the March game, so we weren't sure about him. We had him as a likely candidate, as a possible candidate, but Tyler Adams did make the squad. And now we think he actually might be a starter. Anyway, that was the only candidate at the possible level or higher. So Tyler Adams, the defensive midfielder. Let's go see who is sitting in the middle of the midfield there. And once again, I should say that Berhalter went with his 4-3-3 formation, very much favoured in the games leading up to the Cup. 2/3 of the games he played that formation, and it was actually Cardozo in the first one. He's a central midfielder. We didn't introduce them yet, but we'll meet those players soon. Cardozo then starting in the first game. That's a bit of I think, just to give him experience. It's not a choice we expected. In the second game, it was Yunus Musa. That is more expected. We thought either that would happen or that Adams would come in. And if Adams came in, we thought Yunus Musa would move to the right midfield. We might see that in the Cup, but we're not seeing that here. So Cardozo starting the first game and Musa the second. So that might mean that Adams is a bench player, or at least starts on the bench. Okay, moving on to the central midfield, we do find the players I've been talking about here. Yunus Musa, a definite candidate, was selected. The possible candidate, Luca de la Torre, also selected. And Johnny Cardoso wasn't a surprise as a selection. He was a possible candidate here. Just a bit of a surprise as a starter, because he had only started one of their 9 games in the lead up to the Cup. Okay, we had several possible but unlikely or seemingly off the squad players, none of them selected here. 6 players there, mostly playing in the 2023 Gold Cup, where USA used a B team. But that truly turned out to be a B team, as few of them have made it to this squad. We move over to left midfielder, and we find Weston McKennie as a definite candidate in that spot. Weston McKennie was selected for the squad, and he was the only candidate in that category. On the right side, even though Yunus Musa plays it a lot, we had him as a central midfielder because he was playing there in the absence of Adams. The other candidate here then was Malik Tillman, who was a likely candidate and who was selected. Let's go to the warm-up squad and see what they did. So on the left side, well, we have basically Weston McKenna and Giovanni Reyna coded as an attacking midfielder, both of them playing each of the games. They just switched positions, as we saw during the games leading up to the tournament, sometimes switching. So Reyna was on the left in the first game and the right in the second, and McKennie on the right in the first and on the left in the second. So don't be surprised to see some switching in the cup there. They've been doing that on an ongoing basis. Okay, we move upfield to the left attackers, and here we have Christian Pulisic, so now the captain, and he was selected. He was a definite candidate. We had a likely candidate in Brendan Aronson, and he was selected, so things going very much according to expectation here. Our possible candidate, Kevin Paredes, was not selected there. In the warm-up games, it was Christian Pulisic starting both of them. So they used their starting lineup for both games without too much experimentation, but we did see a little bit with Cardoso as the central midfielder there. Moving over to the right attacking position, we had Timothy Weah as a definite candidate. He's coded as a forward, but we moved some of the players around in part 1, and Timothy Weah was selected for the squad. However, our possible candidate, Alejandro Zendejas, was not selected for the squad. Central attacker that's where we meet Giovanni Reyna. He does play as a central attacking midfielder the few times they've used a formation that has one, but we're seeing him in the central midfield quite a bit. So Giovanni Reyna, a definite candidate, was selected for the squad. We said in part 1 that we weren't sure he was going to be a starter. But as we saw, he was a starter in both of the games there in the central midfield. So I guess that leads us to expected in the Cup. I still have my doubts, though, because I think maybe not the first game, but Adams will come in, and probably at Reyna's expense. Okay, on to the forwards, and we have Folarin Balogun, our definite candidate, and he was selected. Likely candidate Ricardo Pepi, also selected, and also our possible candidate Haji Wright, selected. And here we have probably the biggest surprise, the only really big surprise, is Josh Sargent kind of coming in out of the cold here. We had him as basically retired from the national team, which didn't mean he was aging out or anything, just that he had been off the team for a while since the 2022 World Cup. So anyway, Josh Sargent selected for the squad, and the fourth forward here. So that was ahead of Jesus Ferreira, who we had as a possible but unlikely candidate. So Josh Sargent, part of the squad, and that is it. Those add up to 26. That's the final squad for the USA. So we'll move on to section 3, and this is just a review of the surprises. There aren't many at all. In fact, notable non-selections, there are none. All of our likely or definite players were selected. No one left out that we expected to be there. Surprise non-inclusions, though, there are a couple. Sean Johnson, chosen as goalkeeper ahead of our possible candidate there. But again, on reflection, not really a surprise. If he has recovered from his injuries, then he is a natural selection as the third string keeper. Shaq Moore, also not really a surprise. We did have him as seemingly off the squad, but given the injury to Serginho Dest, which we'll talk about soon, they needed to choose a backup player for this position, and Shaq Moore had been selected for the World Cup in 2022, so was the probably the most logical choice there. But truly a surprise for me is Josh Sargent, the forward being selected. As we said, he had not appeared since the 2022 World Cup, so seemed to be off the team. So we didn't introduce these players. We'll do a quick introduction of them then. So Sean Johnson is 34 years old, the goalkeeper. 13 caps only since 2011, Sean Johnson. Difficult to get ahead of the many good keepers that USA have had over the years. And he plays right here in Canada, only about 4,000 kilometers away from me here, since 2023 with Toronto FC in Canada, and he was with American teams, New York City FC and Chicago Fire prior to that. His first tournament was the Gold Cup in 2013, and in that one he actually did get a start in game 3 there. He didn't appear again until the 2017 Gold Cup, and for the most part was just a bench player. In a couple of those tournaments he did get one game, but perennial backup keeper Sean Johnson, that's why he only has 13 caps, but has been selected for the squad in many tournaments, every one since the 2017 Gold Cup, and that includes the 2022 World Cup. Shaq Moore is 28 years old and is 18 caps and 1 goal since 2018. Shaq Moore plays for Nashville in USA since 2022. He has spent quite a bit of time in Spain with several Spanish clubs, including a youth club there. And has been selected for he was selected for the Gold Cup in 2021. That was his first tournament. He started all 6 games there. We're a little angry at him because he scored the only goal in their game against Canada there. In the World Cup 2022, though he seemed more of a B team player, he was selected for that and subbed into 2 games in the World Cup 2022. A lot of those players selected for the World Cup didn't play in the 2023 Gold Cup, where USA sent a B team, so he didn't appear there. And we really hadn't expected him, because since the Gold Cup in 2023, he hadn't been selected except for this friendly that they played in January 2024 against Slovakia, which was more of a C team. Really, we were surprised to see him on it, and we thought actually that meant kind of a demotion in his status, but apparently not, because he is selected here. Finally, Josh Sargent, he's 24 years old, 23 caps and 5 goals since 2018, and is with Norwich in England since 2021. He played in Germany there, and was with the Werder Bremen youth club as well as their senior team. Josh Sargent was not selected for the 2019 Gold Cup. He was on the preliminary squad. It was a bit of a surprise that he wasn't selected. And the same is true of the 2021 Gold Cup. So always on the fringes of the team. But Josh Sargent not only was selected for the 2022 World Cup, but was a starter in games 1 and 3 there. And then basically has been off the squad. Well, not basically, completely has been off the squad since the 2022 World Cup. That's why it's a surprise to see him selected here. We have no new players added to the list. So USA in the past used to have the problem of just too many players in their pool. And it's quite the opposite here with a very firm squad. And I'm guessing Berhalter is really seeing this squad as the basis of his 2026 World Cup squad. Let's review injuries or updates on injuries. There are no updates, no new injuries to report. Just the one we knew about already to Serginho Dest. So he was obviously dropped due to that injury. It's a cruciate ligament tear since late April. And he is not expected back until January 2025. So not a chance of him being in this tournament. And we knew that. And that is the only injury. So USA quite lucky on the injury front. And that brings us to the end. So I'll just organize the graphic a little bit and say goodbye. We hope our mediacast has made it possible for you to enjoy the tournament a little bit more. Just putting the graphics in place before I sign off. There we go. We would like to thank Paul Udin and Pixabay for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast. The piece is called Victory Epic Music.